Okay, whatever. This is like the third time doing this because I don't know what happened. It just kind of bleeped itself out. I'm outside. Just thought it'd be nice to do one outside. I do them every time it's nice outside. I try to get outside, see how things are. A little bit of an update before I get into the topic. And being outside, so there'll be noises that normally are not in the vlogs. And there'll be more moving around, of course. That just kind of happens when you're sitting outside. And 20 minutes is a little hard for me to be holding this, and I don't have a smaller tripod at the moment. So that's kind of how that works. So you're going to hear lots and lots of different noises. But I just thought it'd be fun to sit out here and do this. Anyway, so, and it's hard for me because even though that's where, here's where my face is. Here's my face. But I see a reflection up here. So I'm always looking up here instead of down there. My face really hurts today. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it's pretty bad. I mean, there's like, when I put my hands on it, it's just bumps, and they hurt and itch and everything. So, a little bit of an update. 3 weeks ago, I had to go to Portland. It was very stressful, and I got sick from that. Took a little bit to bounce back from that. Then, the stuff that's on my face made its way into my ear canals and swelled up my ear canal. So, then I had problems with that. And then, last week, the first part of May, I was out and about a whole lot, and that made me, I got kind of sick from that, because I was doing a lot of walking, a lot more than normal. Hang on. Okay, so, and then, where was I at? Okay, so that stuff went on, my face is just like, so, and then my burning mouth is back. So this is about the same time last year, the burning mouth got really bad. So something probably in the air or something. Also, it's hard to find time to do the vlog because I like to have the vlog filmed on the same day that I post it. That gives it a more real kind of thing to me rather than me filming it at the beginning of the week, edit it, and then, like a week later post it. I kind of like to do it all. It's just me. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to do that, but that's the thing that I like. So the topic for today is sensory processing disorder. Typically in the past, when I first learned about sensory processing disorder, it's one of my specialties that I don't know how that's what you say. It's one of my knowledgeable areas for my job. So children with autism tend to have a sensory processing disorder as well. But they now know that children without autism, or anybody actually, can have a sensory processing disorder. There's a huge connection to fibromyalgia, chronic pain disorder, and sensory processing disorder. There's a lot of research on it out there, and that kind of, to me, makes sense because I have a lot of sensory stuff that goes on with my fibromyalgia, and pain itself is kind of a sensory thing. But in the past, like 20 years ago or so, probably more than 20 years now, in 1999, I went back to school for AA. I was in the process of working with preschoolers, and I wanted to work with preschoolers on the autism spectrum. And then by perchance, I ended up working with children with mental health issues, and they also had sensory processing disorder. So I learned a lot about it, folks. So here's what it is. Some places believe that it exists, and other places don't acknowledge it. That's pretty much the gist of it. So you could go to your doctor and say, I think I have sensory processing disorder, and literally, even though he might not laugh, you kind of get the sense that he doesn't take you serious, or she doesn't take you serious. Actually, none of my doctors take me serious, so that might be an issue. But then you'd meet another doctor who would be like, yeah, that is totally, yeah, I see that. The reason being is that a lot of your senses in fibromyalgia get affected by the processing disorder, but typically it is in children that it's diagnosed, and for the most part, unless they are on an autism spectrum and or the sensory processing disorder seems to be in conjunction with any other mental health issues, you can actually be trained to deal with the processing disorder. There are always exceptions to rules on both sides. There are people who will say, oh yeah, my 3-year-old had it, but we broke him of it. Or my 24-year-old still has it, and we still can't get them to sit on a swing or something. So what is sensory processing disorder? So a really quick pop on that. So what it is the brain receives informations from the central nervous system about certain types of senses, and it either reads the information as too high or too low. Also the same in fibromyalgia. It reads pain too high or too low. There are a lot of people with fibromyalgia that has like really low pain thresholds, and they're always breaking their bones and hurting themselves. That pain thing runs in sensory processing disorder as well, and you will meet children who have really high pain thresholds, like my son is an example of that. He went in to get his blood drawn as a baby, and they had to strap him down, and he just didn't even notice them stabbing him. And it wasn't just that they were good at it. It's just he just had, for almost 2 to 3 years, he didn't really, pain kind of just, he rolled and bounced, and it didn't affect him in any shape or form. Then you can have those that you look at them and they're crying in pain. And I'm not being mean when I say that. I mean, literally, you looking at them makes their brain trigger that there's somehow something painful in that. It sounds funny, it sounds silly, but it really is kind of a stress issue for parents when you're working with children that way, and for adults. Now, so typically it was only considered children had sensory processing disorder and or adults who were on the autism spectrum. The idea that other adults could have it just seemed a little weird to people. But then as they started realizing people with mental health issues have, your sense of everything is kind of wacky whack, then that made more sense. Why some people would, exhibit problems with taste, smell, whatever. So I had that. Now, I only learned I had that after learning about it. And no, it wasn't because, like, some people say you learn about something and you think you have it. I actually went down and had a test for it. There is a psychological test they can give you and a physical test they can give you, where they give you a test that's on a scale. So, like, 50 some odd people have exhibited that this is painful, or 50 some odd people have exhibited that this isn't. That's how the test is created. There's you can make your own test. I mean, it's really easy by writing down a list of things that you yourself find that are an issue for you sensory-wise. But it doesn't become a disorder or a part of a disability until it impedes your ability to function what is considered socially normal. So the moment it becomes such an issue in your life, like the same thing for anxiety. Everybody has a little bit of anxiety, but the anxiety becomes a disorder when it impacts your ability to have what is considered a normal social, economical lifestyle. Okay, so meaning you can't go to work, you can't go to school, it impacts you in your social interaction, it impacts how you move through space, so forth. Okay, so sensory is your taste, your touch, your smell. I said taste, touch, smell. Your spatial sense, and what's the other one? Sight, so how things look. Children in the past I've worked with have like two that are connected. So what I see affects what I taste. What I smell affects what I taste. What I taste affects what I see. what I taste, affects what I smell. And then they usually have the spatial sense. I have spatial issues with the fibromyalgia. I probably had them as a kid. I remember falling a lot as a kid, but then have perfect balance at other times. And then as an adult, same thing, run into things. I lose sense of how close I am to things. And then with my crows visiting me. And then with the fibromyalgia now in the last 3 years, that is really bad because I run into things a lot. I tend to feel like the world, it's not like it's physically, I can't see it tilting, but I feel like the world's tilted, like I'm walking uphill all the time, like slanted. That happens a lot, and I'll tend to fall. Luckily, I catch myself before I fall. My balance is really bad. If I stand on one foot, I'd be screwed. So why talk about sensory processing disorder? Well, I think that it's important because, like I said, some educated people say, yeah, that's really a thing. And then other are like, no, that's not a thing. And we're catering to people. And again, to me, if it's impeding in how you are being successful in any forms of your life, personal, economically, educationally, medically, whatever you want to call it, sexually, then it's an issue, and you need to kind of understand it. People with sensory disorder, myself included, sex is kind of a weird thing too. Like, I don't like sticky fingers. I don't like sticky anything. Anything sticky tends to make me, I have learned to kind of control it to a degree, but it gives me, makes me very, very tired when I have to fight against the sensory part of what's going on in my brain. So when kids run at me with little sticky fingers, of course, you don't want to scream at them, get away from me, even though that's what you feel like. I mean, to the point of like, you just feel your insides are starting to cringe. And it's not just an utterly dislike, it's like somehow this is going to impact you in a sense that's like really bad. So I have learned, though, because I work with children and I work with children who have had sensory disorder, I have learned how to kind of override that. But what happens is it makes me very, very tired, and it just starts making layers of sensory intoleration, so that by the time I get home I have sensory overload, and I just need to go and crawl into my blankets and wrap up and maybe put on some show that doesn't require much brain power, or sleep. That's literally what happens to me. My brain just goes shutdown mode. And that's the thing. You can learn to sometimes override it, and then sometimes you can't. I knew an individual who puked at the smell of eggs. The sight of eggs, the smell of eggs, everything. But because it was so problematic when he was at the breakfast table, everybody liked eggs, we spent almost 2 years working with him to be able to tolerate the smell and the texture. And he didn't really ever like eggs, but he could keep himself from throwing up. But that took a long time, and that's one thing. But that was the one thing that was most important in his family, was him to be able to have a meal with them, and they wouldn't have to restrict what they were eating because that person was having an issue with it. I've met households where they've completely rearranged the whole house to cater to the one individual because it's less stressful. Because think of a 2-3-year-old who's having these immense, sticky hand things, and it's cringing them inside. They don't have the control to try to override their brain. First, because they don't know what's going on, and second, because it's a learned behavior. You have to teach yourself to deal with that. It's like trying to think of something. It's like living in a house where everybody yells all the time. That's a good one, because that's kind of an issue for me. So everybody yells all the time, so everybody yells wherever they go. Everybody's very, very loud. Now, that sensory-wise, that just kind of makes me like cringe. when people yell, even if they're not yelling at me. It just makes me go, whoa, again. And then I have sensory overload because it's just too much sound for me. That was the other one, sound. So I was like, oh, that's the other sense that I was missing. So we have sight, sound, smell, taste, and spatial. For a long time, spatial wasn't considered one. I'm sure there's a different one that I think it was called something different. But spatial can be a problem, not only because of your inner spatial sense, but also because when people like to come close to you, or people want to shake your hand, or people, you know, get into that whatever is your comfort zone, or the fact that maybe you don't have a good understanding of spatial, so you tend to be closer, you like loom on people, creep on people. I say big boys and big girls, like be right on top of you, you know, like literally hanging on you because they don't have a good idea of what the proper social space is. That does different from culture to culture to culture. I've met people from different countries who have sensory processing disorder. Different cultures treat it differently. I find that a lot of the more tribal, like from South America, Pacific Islanders, some of the Chinese, different places in Chinese, the smaller areas, the farms where people work and live at, they just kind of maneuver around it. Like, okay, that person has a problem, we just don't, you know, we move around. And a lot of times, those people have told me that over a period of time, they have lost some and gained others, but were able to eventually navigate their way through their sensory process. I've met lots of people who just kind of laugh at me and say, ha ha ha, yeah, that's not a thing. And I remember one guy, I went on a date with this guy, and we went to a Chinese buffet, and I wasn't going to ever date this guy again. I knew right away, not because of what he did, because of my sensory stuff, but just because every time I tried to try something, he'd take it off the plate and put something else on it and say, no, you have to try this. Like, he was all excited, but he was also very controlling, and the idea of somebody else picking out my food, because I have such a big, I have had problems with food in the past, and I still have it, is very annoying to me. I get that he was excited about it, but he was really bad. So he put a whole bunch of these different types of stuffed mushrooms. Now, I love mushrooms. Don't get me wrong. I love to eat mushrooms. But if they're not cooked just right, and they get that sliminess to them, other people are like, it's not slimy, it's just wet. But when they get that weird, there's a coat they get on them that just, it reminds me of snot. I don't know why. And I can tolerate snot way better than slimy mushrooms. So he gave me a whole bunch of these, and they had like crab, and a couple of them had like oysters or clams or something in them. And he's all like, oh, you'll love these. And it got on my tongue, and I literally could not do anything. I just like, and I was like, my brain went into a total stop mode. So I'm sitting there with the mushroom on my tongue, with my mouth slightly open, trying to figure out a really polite way to get like it out of my mouth without, like, I wasn't gagging, but I just couldn't do anything. I just was like frozen. I was like, So I was like, I could chew it and swallow it, but now at this point, I'm like, the taste, I don't even tasting it. At this point, it's just like, the whole thing is just too overwhelming. Or I could drop it on my plate. And I ended up chewing it and swallowing it, and that was it. He's like, oh, that was great. Have another one. No. I can't have another one. But my whole evening at that point was now ruined, because when you have an issue with your sensory, then your anxiety triggers, and you start having, and if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, you might end up having a panic attack, and that click into. I don't usually get those from that. I just get, like I said, overwhelmed issues, sensory, that I start to shut down. I get really blank face. I get that working bitch face, and everything kind of like slows up for me. Cognitive fog tends to, I feel like I'm encased. And it's my body trying to protect, my brain trying to protect me, because it thinks that there's danger, because I'm perceiving it as danger. It's overly stressful. It's kind of funny. I've had people make comments about it, like, what's going on with you? You look like you were having fun, and then just said, I'm a little overwhelmed, I gotta go. And they're like, if they know me, they're like, oh yeah, okay. If they don't know me, they don't understand, and they're probably not. If they don't care, then they're probably not going to understand. Alright, so that's it. This is really long. If you have questions about sensory processing this, or like I didn't hit on some type of part of it that you have questions about, just go ahead and send me a message. There's a lot more to it. I could tell you all kinds of different ways about it. Like, some children love to be in a swing and that's all they want to be in. Others can't. They scream when you put them in the thing. Some children or people, you put them in clothes and they're out of the clothes as quickly as you put them in them because it's so uncomfortable. I have that with my fibromyalgia now. Certain clothes I can't wear. I've gone through a lot of my older clothes and I'm down to like 4 outfits I think I can wear, because it'll feel like literally there are thorns on the inside of my clothes digging into my skin. It's not. It's all in my head, and I know that, but it's really bad. Or sometimes what will happen is you get a burr, you get a bunch or something stuck in your pants, and one will cause it to feel like all of it's that way. A lot of them is that itchy tag. My daughter couldn't wear certain types of socks that had lines on the toe because it would make her say, she'd just cry. So I just didn't buy those socks. Because there is a difference between you resisting something because you don't like it and you resisting something that is painful or hurtful. There is a difference. It's hard to know, and you do need a professional to help you. Immersion is one of the types of therapy they do for that. They immerse you in it over and over and over. And sometimes that works, but sometimes that just causes more stress on the person. And then that causes post-traumatic stress, and then you just have a whole lot of other things going on. So if you think you have it, go have it checked out. If you feel like you have it and nobody believes you, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you only have to find one therapist that'll say, yeah. I would always go to a therapist and a doctor about it, because therapists are more apt to agree to you, and then you can get it down as in your files as a diagnosis, and that's much more helpful in the long run. Alright, so that's it. I hope you guys are patient with the wobbly we got going on. Everybody's moving hand and everything. And I will catch you on the next one, which is Rambling 101. And, you know, how that works. We just ramble. Might talk about the channel and stuff. Might talk about how I've been feeling. Don't know. So, catch you all on the flip side. I'm out of here. Peace. If you have a really nice sunny day where you're at, go out, walk around for a little bit. Get your vitamin D going. Apparently, us human beings need a lot of vitamin D.